Okay. I don't want. Okay, a warning on this video. This is all personal kind of stuff, and I've been asked by some family and close friends to share some experiences I've had in the distant past, um, just to kind of record them. So there's very little scriptural. In fact, there's probably no scriptures quoted in this. Maybe there might be one or two. Certainly, prayer involved in some of these, but early youth experiences and young adult life experiences. So I guess maybe what I'm thinking is don't watch them unless you really are curious about it. But because I know there's going to be some negative comments just because of storytelling, right? And typically I don't do that. I go from the scriptures and give my thoughts and ideas about what's being revealed to us. I did want to show you a plaque though. Before I get started, and it's kind of hard to see with the glare, but look at that scripture. Well, look at that smoking hot wife first, but I've been trying to talk her into coming on my videos, and she hasn't quite done that yet. But D&C 8884 was our missionary scripture, and I love that. And to prepare the saints for the hour of judgment which is to come. I mean, tell me, how many people start their missions with that scripture in mind? It's just our nature. It's in us. So that's probably why you get a little more of the focus on the punishment versus the reward. Anyway, so I thought I'd start off with an experience that happened to me as a 16-year-old boy. I worked in the summers. Actually, I started when I was 15, but I worked for the Scouts, the Teton Explorer Canoe Base, just south of Jackson Hole. And they had a camp there by Cabin Creek Campground. It was Forest Service land. The base camp was, but they had it leased, and it since has moved further up the river there. But it was an amazing experience. My first year was just total learning and absorbing it all, and we did everything in canoes. We'd start up below Jackson Lake Dam and go all the way down to Cabin Creek. It was close to 100 miles of river, and we do it in either a 3-day trip or a 2-day trip. And the distance was basically the same. Sometimes we'd start right below the dam, Jackson Lake Dam, and go through the Oxbow and all that. But other times we'd start at, I think it was Pacific Creek, but I could be wrong on that. It's where the river starts picking up a little speed, just inside the park, the Teton National Park, and then of course go through the park for 2 or 3 days, camp along the river. I mean, who could not want that, right? So my second year, and I can't remember too many of the guides, my fellow guides. Like I say, I was the beginner. We had some really awesome guys. I remember a guy, I think his name was Rudy Scooten, and Lenny Snellman, the Whitwer brothers, Jeff and Dick Whitwer, the Nichols brothers, Gary and Kurt, I believe. I mean, these are just high-class, super good guys. And I haven't kept track of any of them, unfortunately. But I was this young kid, and they were older and wiser and very much better at guiding than I was. But I did it. I learned. So the second year up there, and I'll just say it. You guys know how I talk now, but we had some real jackasses as bosses that year, and they were the professional scouters. They ran the camp, and I'm not going to tell you the year, and I'm not going to tell you their names. I actually can't really remember, but it's mid 70s. Let's just say mid 70s, okay? So mid 70s. It was pretty bad. The conditions, the food, just the whole thing was kind of a mess. Well, as a result, a lot of the guides, the really good ones, quit, and certainly can't blame them. And most of them, they had skills. They were older. They needed a good job, and they did this not because of the pay, but because of the adventure, right? But when the adventure becomes I don't know, kind of a drag, all of a sudden it's not worth it, and you might as well go make some money. And I think that's what happened with most of these guys. Well, I was with them, and actually came all the way down to Scout headquarters to file our complaints. Mid 70s, it was awesome. But I chose to stay and work, mostly because I was 16. I had no other options that summer as far as work goes. And I didn't really want to just stay at home. I was the youngest. I had 3 older sisters, and they were all gone. And, my parents would just look at me like, what are you going to do in life? What's your problem? What's up? So I thought, I don't want to go home and hear a bunch of things about, what a loser I am. I had great parents. I had awesome parents. So they're not going to say I'm a loser, but the look, right? Like, seriously, what are you going to do? So I thought, I don't want to face that. I'll just stay and work. So I did. And just because, so we had 3 different groups of guides, and we'd rotate those groups, and we had a group leader. And I was definitely not a group leader, but I became one after several guides left. So one of the first trips after that was a trip that I'll never forget. So I'm a 16-year-old boy. I guess I'd be later that fall entering my junior year in high school, I think that's right. So 16-year-old, and we'd have people coming down in canoes, and we'd put 2 people in a canoe, and typically we'd have 6 to 8 people in a group, and we'd have a guide in the front in his canoe and a guide in the back in his canoe. And typically, not always, but typically the guides would go by themselves and just put the lunch or a rock or something to weight down the bow or the front of the canoe. So anyway, that's what we were doing. We started our trip, and we really, really cautioned our canoers, a group, I think they were from Salt Lake, about the dangers of the river, and especially, I think we called it Spruce's Ditch or the Spruce Channel, and we'd had really high water that year, and a lot of dead trees, trees that had been eroded from the banks had fallen into the river and created a log jam, and so the current, so there's trees on the surface of the river stacked up, and then the current goes underneath the trees. You get caught, you get slammed in one of those, you're going to get ripped to shreds. The current's going pretty fast, a lot of power. We literally had aluminum canoes that were just shredded into pieces that summer. So we pulled the group over, and you can actually hear the roar around the corner of the river of the water going underneath these huge cottonwood and spruce trees. So we pull the group over and we say, look, follow that lead guide. Follow the lead guide. When he moves, you move immediately. Don't let the delay whip how you have like a whip, and at the very end, it's very delayed and way in the back, and so we had to tell them, look, you follow the guide, and we have a little window of calm water on the very right side of this log jam to get past. But if you get too far over to the left, you're going to get sucked in. You're going to get sucked in. So, as my memory serves me, I was the lead guide, and we were going through, and I had gotten clear over to that edge. Now, my tail guide got promoted to be a river guide that week, and he had been an assistant cook at one of the camps. He's pretty capable. I wish I could remember his name. He's a great guy. Well, as fate, luck, circumstance would have it, someone tipped over. And we'd make rescues pretty easy. But they tipped over. We had a little bit of time, but they tipped over prior to the log jam. And they had to get out of there. They had to get back in their canoes and get back over to the right side of the river to avoid the log jam. So I see, everybody yells, tip over. And so I looked back, and the new guide in the back is having a very difficult time rescuing them. And I'm 16, I'm not sure what to do, but I thought I've got to make an attempt to try to rescue those people. So I'm yelling at everybody to get over to the shore, get over to the right-hand side, get over to the right-hand side. And I start paddling upstream, and I get to the canoe, and I start to make a rescue, and just then we hit the log jam. We floated into it just that fast. And we all went underneath, canoe after canoe after canoe. Some people made it over to the right-hand side, but many were just kind of watching and seeing, and next thing you know, it happened so fast. I remember grabbing hold of a branch after getting kind of ripped through everything, and I got hold of a branch that angled, or a branch of a tree that had angled into the water. And I followed those branches up, and I got out of the water. I looked down, and I saw some hair floating in the water. And it was a young lady on our trip, and her life jacket had caught her, and she could not get her head above water. And all I saw was her head floating, or her hair floating on top of the water. I grabbed her hair and pulled her by her hair enough for her to get a breath. It took some effort, but I was able to free her life jacket from where she was caught. I got her onto the log jam. One by one, I found the people. Oh, we had head injuries. We had broken ribs. We had some serious cuts, deep wounds. But we all made it. Our canoes were gone. If memory serves me correct, we lost 7 canoes in that log jam. It's not something I'm proud of. But no lives were lost. It was a miracle. We had 4 canoes left. This was a big group, way too big, but it was out of, we just kind of did the best we could with the people we had. And I'm not blaming anybody. Everybody was justified in what happened there. And we were all trying to do our best. So here we are. I'm a 16-year-old boy. I have several injuries. We have 4 canoes left. And there's no way, some of them said, there's no way I'm getting in a canoe. And I've got to find help, right? So I said, okay, hang on a second. I was able to get the 4 canoes that were on the other side of the river to convince them to paddle over to our side, because we were behind the log jam at this point. We're behind the log jam. It's upstream from us, if you will. So they got over to us. I loaded up those canoes. Well, okay, let me back up. I said, just give me a second here, because they're all looking to me to solve this issue. We have injuries, we have scared people. It's not good. So I went off a little ways, and I knelt down and I prayed like I'd never prayed before. Now I was a halfway decent young man. I mentioned in another video that I wasn't the best seminary student, but I had faith enough that God would answer my prayers as a 16-year-old. And I knelt down and I said, God, I need your help. I don't know what to do here, and I've got to get help for these people. And it was almost like there was a clarity. I didn't have, amazing light or vision, but I just had a clarity in my mind that this is what I needed to do. And I didn't know what it was until I said it. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like, just start speaking and things will work. Okay, so I go back to the group with this confirmation from God. And I said, okay, we're going to load up these canoes with at least 4 people in each canoe. And we're going to get the ones that are healthy enough. And I said, you guys, with the other guide who hadn't really done any guiding, I said, you're going to go downriver just a little ways, and you're going to see a small channel off to your left. You take that channel, and it'll lead you right to our first night camp. That was only on faith. That was only on faith. I said, I'm going to take these injured people, and we're going to walk through the woods, and we're going to get help. We were in Teton National Park. We were in the park, and we headed off through those cottonwood trees and pine trees, and we headed off. And after I don't know how long, and like I say, we had some pretty serious injuries. We'd stopped the bleeding. I'd had a really good first aid kit with me, and I was trained somewhat in first aid, and took care of the immediate issues. The broken ribs were the most serious ones as far as the person able to travel. The head injury really had me concerned because I was certain there was a concussion. The eyes were dilated, and we had some issues, but they could walk. So we walked. Well, after some time, and it was starting to get a little dark, after some time, I saw light. And I just went towards that light. That light ended up being a small cabin that was in the national park and actually had been grandfathered in on one of those 99-year leases. And as long as the family keeps it in the family, they can continue to lease it. It's a pretty sweet deal. And I noticed they had a car there. I knocked on the door and they answered, and I said, we've had a serious accident on the river, and I've got several people here that need help, medical help. And it was an older couple, I got to be careful now when I say older couple. They're probably in their 50s, and that's really young now. But as a 16-year-old, they seemed older. I can't really remember. And they just said, we're here to help. What do we need to do? And I said, well, let's get into Moose. Moose Junction, if you know the Teton area, you know that. They have a little facility there. And, I knew, and the ranger station was there, and I knew we could at least get some help. Which we did. And some had to go to the hospital, the little tiny hospital that was in Jackson Hole at the time, and get treated there. But it all worked out. Come to find out, later on, we had a search party out for us. The other guide with the people that were healthy and had the 4 canoes, they made it and came right out at first night camp. They told everybody the situation and what we were doing. And it all worked out. There were stitches. There were, people treated for the concussions and broken ribs, but there's not a lot you can do for broken ribs. Anyway, it was a true answer to prayer. And that pretty much led me on a path of faith. I knew that somebody heard my prayers. and I knew I got a clarity that I'd never had before. It was very interesting. So I share that story. On my next video, I'll be sharing a story about a climbing incident that I was involved in the Wind River Mountains, climbing Gannett Peak. This would have been the following year, the following summer. So I'm kind of going chronological on these. I'll share one missionary experience, which I might have shared before, but I think it's good to share it again. So that's it. That's my. That was one of my. I had so many experiences on the river. It really shaped me. It was. I did it for 4 summers prior to my mission, and I didn't work there after my mission. 2 of my children ended up working on the river, which I was excited for, and it was so neat to see them at work up there. But yeah, it really shaped me. I made a lot of really close friendships while I was there. I was too stupid to continue those friendships, but at the time, it was amazing. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about people. I learned a lot about culture. I was exposed to a lot of things, both good and bad, and kind of made some mistakes, but I learned to overcome them. And that really shaped me. A mission was pretty easy compared to some of the things I went through on the river. So anyway, that's it. Again, the next few videos are going to be videos like this, and they are what they are. All right, that's it. Thank you. Bye-bye.